Hello and welcome to another installment of I Am Issachar. Today I would like to talk to you coming out of Genesis chapter 4. It's the story of Cain and Abel. Have you ever known God to get upset? I mean, really be upset? I know we often see God as this God who is, dealing with his people and he has a wrath and he's vengeful. But the truth of the matter is, God is a father. And so as a father, he deals with his kids. And just like any other parent, when their kid gets an attitude, especially when they got their countenance all messed up, a mom or dad might say something like this: fix your face. So, with that being said, let's deal with the text of fix your face. All right, it tells us in Genesis chapter 4. Now, Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Verse 2. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Translation, farmer. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of fruit of the ground to the Lord. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. So the simple part of the story is this: that Cain and Abel were to bring an offering to the Lord. The Bible tells us that Cain brought forth his offering, and it was of the fruit of the ground. The Bible also tells us that Abel brought forth his offering, and it was the fat of the sheep, and it was the fat of the sheep and of his firstborn, the firstborn of his flock. So what made the difference in the offering to God, that God respected Abel's offering, but he had an issue with Cain's offering? I've often asked the question. Now, theologians will say something along the lines, well, God wanted an offering of blood, and that Cain was disobedient, and Cain just brought any old thing to God. Perhaps it could be true. I don't know. But when I look at the text, what I see is this. It says that in verse 3, and in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. But look what it says in verse 4 about Abel. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering. Now, let's just look at both of the possibilities. Could it been that God wanted the blood? That's a possibility. The other side of that could also be that maybe Cain just brought any old thing to God. When you look at the text clearly states that Abel brought of the firstling of his flock. I wonder, would God have had a different attitude with Cain had Cain brought forth the first fruit of his stock, of what he had grown? Maybe Cain brought just any old thing, like he thought it was just good enough for God. Well, when it comes to God, we cannot just give him any old thing. He wants our best. So God confronts Cain on the matter. And the Bible tells us that Cain has the nerve to get upset. God, being a loving father, goes and he talks to Cain, and he says to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? In other words, fix your face. What's the problem? If you would do what I'm asking you to do, we would not have this conversation right now. If you would do what I was asking you to do, maybe things would go well for you. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what it says in the next verse. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. There are times in our lives where God has to deal with us just like he dealt with Cain, and ask us to fix our face. In other words, fix our attitudes. God asks us to do something, our response should be, okay, we'll do it. Now, let's go ahead and be honest, we don't always have to like it. But simply because he asks us to do it, it should be our natural inclination to say okay. Now, we might say okay with a messed up attitude. We might say okay with a sullen expression. We might say okay just with a huff and a puff. But are we obedient to what he asks of us? I'm willing to bet that had Cain checked his attitude, had Cain brought forward his best to God, maybe God would have respected his offering as well. But I guess we'll never know. But what I do know is this, that when it comes to our attitude, God will deal with us. He's simply asking us, make sure that we have the right attitude and we come to him in the right spirit. And when we don't, expect him to say to us, fix your face. All right. You guys have a wonderful day. Let's go ahead and pray. God, thank you for the opportunity to look in your word, to study your word. And God, we're asking that you would help us to have better attitudes when you are asking us to do things. Whether we like it or whether we don't, God, allow us to be obedient to your call. It's in Jesus' precious name we do pray. Amen. All right. Have a great rest of your day.